Yes, I. This song is called...
Hello and welcome to another session of the Online Vegan Lifestyle Summit. For this session we have Krishul here. He's a singer and actor as well and dancer. And thank you so much for being here.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Katharina.
So can you start by just sharing a little bit about your, what you do right now, and then your journey towards veganism, how you came to the lifestyle, and how it's impacted your life and maybe even your singing career as well. So.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I'm a singer and dancer. That's my passion. I think one of the greatest things you can do is inspire people, and I found music is a powerful way to do that. I'm also into acting, but for the most part, my passion has always been the performing arts, singing for the most part. And a couple of years back, I was involved in a TV show called The Voice, and that kind of helped my career a little, and I've been doing a lot of gigs around Melbourne trying to promote my music, releasing a single pretty soon. And combined with that, I'm also very much into, I guess what you'd call the truth movement, animal rights, anything to do with activism. I've always been very devoted towards trying to, I guess, uplift this probably sounds a little pompous, but uplift the vibration of the world. Doing anything where you're trying to have a positive impact in the world. I think a life where you're only focused on yourself can be a little unfulfilling. So for a long time I've been involved in animal rights, truth movement, all that kind of stuff, and I make videos. I interview people on my podcast, The Krishul Journey, which I'm recording on now. And as far as my involvement or my journey towards veganism, pretty much started as a kid at the age of 6. I watched a movie called Benji, and whereas this didn't deal with animal rights at all, it was pretty much the catalyst, because even though I loved animals as a kid, watching that movie moved me so much, where just seeing what that dog went through, I realized just how deep my love ran for animals. And I somehow made the connection after watching that I loved animals, and somehow consuming them was not in their interests, and obviously that was playing a role in facilitating the mess. And that, combined with the fact that my father was a vegetarian, he'd spent a lot of time in India. My dad was a lieutenant commander of the Navy, and he got to travel the world a lot. And because he became a hippie during his time in India and was tied into the whole spiritual tradition, that influence played a role in influencing me. And in fact, my name's Krishna, which is it's one of the deities in the Hindu religion. And bottom line was, my dad's influence played a role. That, combined with watching Benji, played a role in me becoming a vegetarian. And just over time, probably around 2010, as I started to learn a lot more, I watched a movie called Earthlings, which I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this are very familiar with. It's probably the most difficult documentary I have ever watched, and I highly recommend people, even if they're not thinking about going vegan or vegetarian, just to check it out, just to give them an appreciation of what we're currently immersed in, like what some of these animals have to go through, just to open their eyes. I think it's really important for people just to educate themselves about what goes on in the world. I've always been a big fan of education, and one of the reasons that I moved towards veganism was because being involved in the truth movement, learning about a lot of the things that were going on in the world, I had a thirst for knowledge, and it led me to this documentary, and it just blew the roof off of the house, so to speak. And at that point, even though I was a vegetarian, I didn't know too much about the dairy industry, I wanted to do a lot more, and I didn't really know any vegans as such, but I had a basic idea of the whole concept of veganism, basically trying to take it to a higher level. And even though as a vegetarian I was pretty much going about avoiding animal products as far as leather and using animal products, which was in line with the whole vegetarian tradition, I just wanted to do a lot more, and I started sharing copies of Earthlings, showing that to my friends, and I became a stringent vegan for a few months, but I kind of laxed up on it. I wasn't stringent with the byproducts, but probably around 2012, late 2012, just to make this long anecdote brief, I started to get a few health problems, and I noticed once I cut eggs, cheese out of my diet, I started to see a huge change in my health in so many different aspects. As a singer, obviously my sinuses cleared up, and I learned later on that that was due to a lot of the mucus that is found within, dairy. And look, I don't need to go through all the health benefits, but when you get a sense of what it feels like to be really healthy, you don't want to go back. And because I've always been motivated towards being the best version of myself, and I've always been into athletics. Used to compete in athletics in high school, was in the nationals and triple jump, penultimate state champion, long jump, won the pentathlon almost every year, and had been very much focused towards athletics, martial arts. Once I noticed how much of an impact taking that out of my diet was, it just pretty much sealed the deal. And eventually I cut out. It was just a process over time. I started cutting out more and more things. Eventually, the last thing I dropped was honey, and that was pretty much just. It was pretty much just doing a bit more research as I started learning more about the industry and certain standards that some farmers employed. I thought I really wasn't in line with that, and I know that's always a contentious issue, the honey one. Some vegans are cool with it.
Controversial, yeah.
Yeah, but me personally, the main reason that I cut out the byproducts to begin with was a health reason. And over time, as I continued to learn more and more and more, just through my involvement in animal rights, truth movement, I learned about the dairy industry and just many of the practices that are obviously applied, at least in the Western world. And it shocked me, and obviously that just pretty much has solidified all my views, and I just became more and more knowledgeable. And I guess the best way to talk about my whole experience, my whole journey towards veganism is, as I learned more, as I watched more documentaries, I just changed. I think it's impossible not to change as you learn. Like, there's one of my favorite quotes is, "To know and not to do is not to know." And as I learned more and more about these things through all the documentaries I watched, I developed this voracious appetite for watching documentaries, and eventually I stumbled onto Earthlings, Food Matters, Forks Over Knives, and a whole bunch of documentaries. It just clicked, and then I learned more about health and ancient civilizations and a lot of the practices of even my culture, going back to ancient Egypt. For instance, the Kemetic sciences, they deal with a lot of the practices to govern a healthy mind, healthy body, and learned that the optimal way of living in accordance to nature and being the best version of yourself was adopting this diet and changing, obviously, your attitude and things like that. So, in short, even though that's a long waffle, I tend to rant a lot, that was my whole experience with moving towards, I guess, what we'd call a vegan diet.
Yeah. That's amazing. Have you found that becoming vegan has impacted your singing career as well, or have you made any? Did it change you in any way, or the way you perform, or the way you sing as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's something that I used to think about a lot. I didn't want to combine my activism with music, because I'd heard a lot of people talk about how one of the worst things to do if you're a musician, because you're obviously trying to influence as many people as you can, is to bring politics, to bring issues, polarizing issues, like whether it's veganism or whatever else you might have. And we all know how unpleasant the conversation can be, and the stereotype that's prevalent throughout the media. Vegans can be very annoying, and for a long time I didn't actually want to speak about a lot of these things, and I kind of separated it. And I found, particularly when I got fully immersed in the whole vegan community, I became one of those, I guess, militant kind of vegans, and I just realized that it was probably pushing a lot more people away. And as a result, I became very reluctant speaking about it openly. But I found that the more real I was, the more open I was to having these discussions without being so pushy about it, the more people would kind of come to my aid and kind of be more interested in what I was saying. And I found the more that I would speak about this in podcasts, more people would start following me. So strangely enough, there's this whole idea that you shouldn't talk about these things, but I find it's quite the opposite. There's so many musicians out there that intertwine their music with their activism, and they do it in the right way, where they're not openly aggressive about it. It's not like they go about promoting this stuff at their gigs, but they do have a way of speaking about this stuff where it doesn't polarize people. And I've always been a big fan of being the change that you want to see in the world. And whereas I don't actively promote this stuff at my gigs, I think people eventually learn about what I stand for, and they just gravitated towards my ideals. Like, I found, strangely enough, that a lot of the kids that were interested in my music, they'd somehow find out that I was into this kind of stuff, into animal rights, into the health, the environmental, the ethical side of trying to impact the world in a better way. And they would actually come to me, and they'd start questioning me about this kind of stuff. So, strangely enough, in a way, speaking about these things, not so directly, but kind of just leading by example, kind of just, I guess, trying to be the change that I want to see in the world. That's one way of putting it. Basically, just trying to be real about my experiences with people, but not forcing it in their face. That, in a way, is actually, I think, played a role in helping my music. I think I watched a beautiful video just recently on Alicia Keys talking about the same thing, about how a lot of people in the industry think one of the worst things you can do is speak about polarizing political issues or topics like feminism, veganism, whatever it might be. But in a way, it's important to do that. I think when you're in a position of influence, it's more incumbent upon you to speak about issues that matter. And the more that I become passionate about these things, I think the better effect it has on actually fueling my music. I think it's the role of artists not only to be purveyors of inspiration, but purveyors of powerful change. And you have a look at some of the best musicians, people like Jimi Hendrix, John Lennon, Michael Jackson. I think they were social revolutionaries as well. Bob Marley is one of my favorites, and they had a way of tying not only their music, but their activism in a way that wouldn't rub people the wrong way. And I guess to some extent I'm trying to do that. I know that's a bit of an ambivalent answer, but in a roundabout way, I found that it has actually helped my music. Being a passionate activist, I just try not to be so direct and try not to be so, hey, everyone, you're a piece of shit, unless of course you stop eating animals, that kind of stuff. That always rubs people the wrong way. Yeah,
that's right. Definitely. And yeah, I feel like that would help you'd have more purpose in that way. If you spread the vegan message, and then what am I trying to say? Sorry. Kind of lost my train of thought.
I think it's so important to be likable as well. I mean, this is actually something I got from my friend Ron. Like, he talks about how congruence is a real big aspect of everything that he does, and people aren't going to want to be in line with what you're promoting if they don't like you. And if you come across as an angry person, if you come across as a talentless person, someone that people can't relate to, then it doesn't help your cause. And I guess what I was trying to say before is that by simply focusing on my music in a way, without actually doing it, focusing on anything and becoming excellent at it, people are obviously drawn to you. And that actually has a way of influencing people, particularly young kids. I think they're very impressionable. And I've heard of so many kids. For instance, Duran Ryder is a classical example. Like, he's someone that, regardless of how you may feel towards him, he's someone I've heard a lot of kids speak about. How one kid in particular, this kid called the vegan kid, how he was purely interested in cycling, which Duran Ryder is a huge fan of. And he, simply by being interested in cycling and watching all the cycling videos from Duran Ryder, he started to learn about veganism, because he started noticing that Duran Ryder was also interested in veganism, and because he liked Duran Ryder and liked cycling, he got into veganism that way. And in a roundabout way, simply just focusing on becoming excellent at one thing, whether that is a musician, whether that's an athlete, that gives you a lot of influence, and that can have an effect on moving people to a state of mind that is in line with what you believe in. I've seen so many other people like Timothy Sheep apply that approach, where they simply use their success in their realm to bring about the change that they want to see in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it totally makes sense. How you can, it's interesting how you say that, and like how you can, indirectly influence people. So
Absolutely.
Not directly being, I'm vegan, go vegan as well, but,
Absolutely.
Being a role model for something, and in something else, so singing or acting or whatever. And then because people admire you, then they're more likely to, like you for being vegan, or be curious about veganism as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Because I found from my own experience that that's the most powerful way of doing it. I mean, granted, there are different approaches, different courses for horses. I think I stuffed up that phrase, but you get the idea. There are some people that tend to be a lot angrier about it. They tend to be more direct in your face. And look, that works. That has some effect to some extent. I find my experience has been that it can rub people the wrong way, and it can make it. The most difficult thing I found is that it's important to be not only effective in your approach, but have it work for you. And I found that when I was more kind of in your face about it, it ended up bringing a lot of distress in my life, and it just didn't sit well with me. And I found that one of the best ways of me not only being consistent with doing what I believe is right, but having peace, and I think it's so important to have peace in your life, is to try to be the change that I want to see, as opposed to smashing on someone's door trying to get that message to them. And I've seen so many people, a lot of my friends who have actually made that change, that adopted a vegetarian or vegan diet, they did so not because I was hitting them over the head with the information, but they just noticed that, oh, wait a sec, here's a guy that I like, and I imagine he seems to be doing well, he's healthy. They came about it that way, and I found a lot of these friends that initially became vegan or vegetarian, then they became full-on stringent about it. They started throwing the information at people in a very kind of violent way. Eventually, it ended up burning them out, and it can really stuff up a lot of people. Like, I've seen a lot of people become very distressed and kind of like drained from it. I've seen that happen to a lot of my friends, and I've kind of given them my own experience, and I found that one of the best ways to do that is to realize that you don't have to. You can only do what you can. You don't have to take the weight of the world on your shoulders. Obviously, we're all trying to make a change in the world, and you have to find a balance between living for yourself and living for others. And to me, it's important to find that balance. I've always said that I've always wanted to make a change in the world, but I also want to. I'm narcissistic to some extent as well, and obviously I want to be loved. I want to do something where I feel people appreciate what I'm doing, and there's definitely a part of me that wants to experience all the limelight, the love, the attention, all that kind of stuff. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and it's about finding a balance between those two mediums. And I've always felt you kind of have to do what you have to do before you can do what you want to do, and that's the approach that I take.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think, self-care is so important, especially if you're vegan, making sure that you feel good, and, that you eat the healthy, and you're in the right mindset. You're in the right space of mind. No,
absolutely.
That's not
Frame of mind.
But
absolutely.
So before you actually talk to others about it, because if you're angry and you have all this information, and then you go out and talk to others about it, it's just not going to work, and it's going to drain you. So
absolutely, that's such an important point, and it comes across as well. Like, I often see a lot of people that are coming from a very disgruntled place, and it's something that's not really spoken of a lot, I think, in the community, that whereas there's this attitude of love and compassion, without a doubt. I mean, you find that a lot of people that adopt this lifestyle, they're doing it from a place of overwhelming compassion, not only towards human but non-human animals, and that's fair enough. But a lot of the times, a lot of people are overcome by that bitter frustration, not understanding why people won't make that change. They see so much, particularly when you watch a lot of these videos, like you see something like Earthlings, and you feel this sense of kinship towards these animals. I mean, a lot of people don't realize, a lot of, people that don't understand where certain vegans are coming from, don't realize that they look at a lot of these animals as their own kin. I mean, I feel the same way when I look at, I think most people experience this when they look at a dog or something like that. We all have this sense of kinship with that. And when you see something you care about going through this amount of pain, it creates a lot of discord within you, and it ends up making you very angry when you see people that are condoning the violence that goes on. And as a result, people lash out, some of these people in the community, and they end up putting out this negative energy that only moves people away. And I find what you put into the world comes back at you. And because of that, there is this air, even though it's not widely spoken of, I find, there's this air of discord that's coming from a lot of people that speak about these issues, and it tends to pull people away. I think one of the best ways to influence people is to have attractive qualities. I mean, people are attracted to attractive people. When I say that, I mean people that are happy, that are lively, that are fun to be around, that are silly, that can have a good time. But if you're constantly around people that are so depressed and negative all the time, and I think it's important to be so to some extent. I mean, the reality is that people need to see oncoming danger. They need to realize the problem in order to make a change. I don't buy into this whole attitude of let's stick our head in the sand like emus because we don't want to see the problem. I think there's definitely a need to be real with people, but it's also important to come from a place of love because it makes people not want to come into your fold if you're expressing a lot of hate. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely, I agree totally. Compassion is the most important thing as a vegan.
Absolutely.
Another thing I wanted to ask you is, because you mentioned before you have you had a lot of your friends go vegan because of you, and you inspired them. Do you also have did you make new vegan friends while you're vegan? Because I know a lot of people struggle with finding vegan friends or like-minded people to hang out with and share their thoughts. So what was your experience on that when you first turned vegan, and did you feel lonely around your friends, or what was that like?
Okay, well, addressing the loneliness aspect of it, I mean, look, like everyone, I get lonely and I love being around people, but I've never felt like I needed to be around only one type of people, like only people that see things from my perspective. I find that there's individuality in everyone, in every group of society, and I like that. I like being around people that don't always see eye to eye with me on issues, and I find a lot of people in the vegan community, that are newly vegan, they do want to find friends that are vegan, that are like-minded, that get where they're coming from. And I've always found that it can actually be very powerful being, I guess, the vegan in the room, because you can open people's minds to perspectives that they weren't aware of. Whereas when you're around people that already have the same mindset, you find that you're reinforcing the same kind of ideas. You get caught up in this cesspool but you all think the same way. You're all saying the same kind of stuff, and to some extent, it ends up being a little stale. I like actually being the person that has this perspective that's a little different. So I didn't struggle with needing to have vegan friends in my life. I actually enjoyed being around. I've always enjoyed being the weird person. From early high school, I was the only vegetarian in my class, or maybe my school, and I kind of liked that because it made me weird. I was the only black person in my class, or maybe school at that point, and I actually liked that. I mean, granted, there was a lot of racism there, but it also made it different. It made it more interesting to be around people that didn't see things the same way I did, or hadn't had the same experiences. And I think a lot of the times people get caught up in wanting to be around people that are the same to them, but it's very important, I think, to grow and to be in what I call a big world. And when you're around people from different groups, that have different perspectives on things, it forces you to grow. I think it's very important for people not to get caught up in only wanting to be around, I guess, vegans. This is something I see a lot. And I think the more you're around people that have different mindsets and things, it gives you more of an opportunity to invite them into seeing things your way. Like, in a way, it's a form of activism, really. I mean, if you're preaching to the choir, so to speak, you're obviously not going to have the opportunity to change as many people's minds, But if you're speaking to people that already like you, already have things in common with you, and I can always find something I mean, particularly with guys, and more often than not, guys are, one, they like sports, they like girls, so there are two things to talk about already. So I already have something in common with them. I don't need to have all these other things in common with them. I find people want to have this vegan thing in common with people because it's such a huge part of their life, but we have more commonalities than we do differences, and it's just about finding what those commonalities are and using that as a way of using that as like a framework to speak about other things. Like, for instance, if I find someone's really into health, they're really into fitness. Hey, I'm really into fitness as well. Hey, let's talk about that, man. Hey, what do you eat? Oh, well, man, I'm actually on a plant-based diet. Oh, really? How do you get your protein? Well, actually, your protein's it's found in what you can get protein from, like, what, vegetables? Well, there you go. Or whether it's for instance, most of my friends are interested in conspiracies, the truth movement, and one of the that's probably been the biggest link that I've had in influencing people, because I've always been interested in what I call esoteric things within enclosed circles. That's what actually brought me into the whole vegan movement, because a lot of people weren't aware of the nature of the of the industry, the meat industry, the dairy industry, what actually went on. And because I could connect with them on all these other esoteric topics, for instance, what's going on in government, the history of the world, the things dealing with crazy stuff, which I won't get into lest my viewers think I'm a nutcase, it made it easier for me to refer them onto documentaries like Earthlings, documentaries like Food Inc. So it's just about finding the commonalities that you have with people, and if they're interested in something like health, speak about health-related things, speak about the health side of veganism to them. If they're interested in the truth movement, speak about it from like a conspiratorial perspective, because there is a lot of stuff that's hidden from the mainstream in regards to what's best for their health, and that's probably the biggest thing that I found influences people. When people are made aware of just the what I call the matrix that we're currently immersed in, the fact that similar to the Matrix, there is this wool that's been pulled over the eyes of the masses in regards to how consuming many of these products affects their health, how it's impacting the environment, how it's impacting pretty much everything. I even go into the metaphysics of it. I'm very much into the metaphysical aspects of things. There's a guy by the name of Rupert Sheldrake that speaks about how many of the things that we're doing actually affect what's called the morphogenic field of the planet. And he's basically scientifically proven that many of the horrible things that we do in society, they actually are felt by our species through this morphogenic field. And I kind of look at it from that perspective for people that are kind of inclined towards understanding things from more of a spiritual perspective or a global ecological perspective. So I find it, I know I'm giving a really long answer, but I find there's so many approaches to speak about animal rights, to speak about these topics, and it's just about finding what people are fascinated with.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think everyone should hear this answer because, so many people, as you said, get so caught up in having to, find vegan friends. I need someone who understands me, but you can use that to your advantage. You can use that to inspire other people. And I feel like that's what I notice is if you only hang out with vegan people, then you're in this bubble and you don't really realize what's going on outside that bubble. And then when you go out, you're like, oh my god, like, oh shit, people still eat meat. Oh no. Yep. And then you kind of face with that, and it just makes it more difficult to go about in the normal, world. So,
that's a beautiful point. What I find, and this is actually to some extent becoming a problem, and this happens with pretty much all ideologies, whether it's the feminist movement. I'm hugely obsessed with having a look at the evolution of different ideologies in history, and you find how they morph into these groups that spend so much time that most other societies don't really understand the way they're thinking. And this is just a delicate way of me saying that you find in the vegan community, people get caught up in this bubble, and because they reinforce the same way of thinking to other people that have the same mindset, when they come across people that aren't of that mindset, they look at them as complete aliens, you know what I mean? And that's one of the problems I found. I think it's so important for people to question things, not only things that are coming from the mainstream, but things that are coming from the alternative movement as well. I mean, there's this Galileo fallacy, like where people talk about how, well, one of the common arguments you'll hear, dealing with veganism, the truth movement, is that, look, most people obviously didn't believe Galileo when he was talking about the heliocentric planet, all that kind of stuff, but didn't buy into what he was saying about the Earth being round. Even though I know there's still a lot of people out there that believe the world is flat. That's another story. And they make the argument, they make the parallel to the vegan movement, like, oh, you guys obviously, you'll find out that we're right, which is true. I absolutely believe that. But with that kind of mindset, I find when they're not quick to question things, because there are so many people within the vegan movement that think like this. They all assume that they must be right, and they're not open towards questioning what is said by the alternative media. And I think it's so important to question everything. And what happens when people don't? People start reinforcing the same kind of stuff, is it becomes more difficult for other people that are not within this environment to relate to them. And more importantly, I find people run these groups sometimes run into seeing things in a very kind of like somewhat culty way, like rather because they're so caught up in seeing. And I think one of the important things for growth is to have diversity in thought. And when there isn't enough diversity, sometimes I find people start behaving like sheeples. People start saying parroting the same kind of stuff, saying things like, the rants that you often hear within the vegan movement that tend to polarize a lot of people. And I think it's important for people to question everything, not get caught up in seeing things purely from the mindset of their group. That's why I encourage people to go out and sow these vegan seeds into the minds of non-vegans, into the minds of people that are not inclined to seeing things from your perspective, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. Totally agree. What else did I want? Yeah, so I think we've talked a lot about a lot of things. So before we finish the interview, I'd like to ask you 5 questions
Sure.
which I ask everyone who I'm interviewing. And the first one is, what is the one thing that you would tell yourself if you could travel back in time to when you first turned vegan? What would you tell yourself?
The tremendous health benefits. I could go through so many different health benefits. Obviously, as a singer, sinuses improve, but I would also go into more of the metaphysical side of things. Like, I think one of the important things towards growing, not only in your consciousness as far as your understanding of how the world works, but is to grow in compassion. And I find that when you're going about your life having more compassion, broadening your circle of compassion not only for human animals but non-human animals, what I call agape. It's basically where you have this sense of compassion that is universal. It's like having a family unit where you care about your brother, your mother, you care about people within your small circle, but you expand that to embody not just your family but the entire society or entire world of sentient beings. You know what I mean? Like, as you grow in compassion, I think your heart grows and you open yourself up to more experiences and more life. I think when you open your heart, I mean, one of the things from the spiritual traditions, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of the Vedic literature, and one of the things they speak about in growth is opening your heart, your anahata as it's referred to, and they speak about how as you move towards higher levels of consciousness, Christ consciousness as they call it, or awakening, it's very important for you to open your heart in compassion. And when you do that, that's when you can actually matriculate to higher levels of consciousness. This is when you start becoming more, I guess you would open yourself up to what a lot of people would call kind of crazy metaphysical abilities. For instance, I would just call being more aware, like increasing what's called your metis, your sensitivity towards the physical and metaphysical environment. For instance, developing more empathy, developing more intuition. I think when you open your heart and consciousness and you become more connected towards, you don't just look at animals as if they were like an item, and you expand that attitude that you have towards your dog, towards all animals. It definitely enriches your life, and without a doubt, it's not easy. You obviously become awake to all the horrible nature of the world as well, and that can be difficult. But I think the only way that you can really grow and really live life is to open yourself up wholeheartedly. And I'm not going to lie, it's definitely not an easy thing to do. I could talk about how, once you make that connection, it becomes incredibly easy. It's not easy, and there's definitely a side to it that can be very difficult, particularly when you realize people don't see the world your way. But I think if you love growth, if you love trying to be the best person that you can be, one of the best things that you can do is to learn about what's going on in the world and change yourself. So I hope that answers the question. I'd tell people,
Yeah.
well, the biggest thing for me was if I'd been aware of I guess the full extent to how it would affect my health and the full extent to how it would open me up to just compassion. That would be it.
Definitely. And do you have a habit that you follow that can help you, that consistently helps you to be happy and be a happy vegan, basically?
Yeah. I'd probably think back to my favorite song. It's from a Beatles song called Hey Jude, and I'm probably going to butcher the lyrics a little bit. It deals with not carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. Don't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. I think a lot of people get so caught up with feeling as if they're responsible for everything. I've heard people talk about how they feel they need to speak to someone about animal rights, vegetarianism, veganism, because by not doing so, that's a person that is going to cause harm in the world. That kind of mentality, it can seem like a beautiful idea, but it can be dangerous, because if you're spending all your energy on trying to resolve the problem in the world, it can obviously have an impact on you. And I think you need to make sure that your cup is full. I mean, one of the analogies that I love is that before you need to make sure that your cup is overflowing before you can be in a position to allow that life to help to heal others. You know what I mean? If you're constantly trying to fill your cup up and you're never getting there because you're being drained by having to deal with all the bullshit that you deal with in your life, people telling you that you're crazy, you're an idiot, whether that's online or offline, you're never going to have your cup full. And you need to be in a place where you are looking after yourself and you're full of life and you have happiness in your life before you can go about trying to make the world a better place. Otherwise, you're going to find out and I've seen it happen to so many people. I'd probably say the best advice I can give to people is to make sure they focus on bringing about their own happiness and making sure that they're secure mentally, physically, before they devote their life towards trying to heal the world, because you're only going to end up causing more damage to yourself if you take on that approach.
Yeah, definitely. And you can't influence others if you're not in the right place to do so. Yeah, that's
absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
Totally. Is there any book or resource that you can recommend to someone that stood out to you that you've been reading that
totally.
help the vegan journey a bit, make it easier?
Too many. I mean, one of the things that I'm obsessed with is learning about different people that are in the activist truth movement community, and I compiled a massive list. I'm going through so many people. I've been interested in this stuff since I was 9 years old, so I've developed like a very long list of people. In recent times, though, I'd probably say, and I'm always very reluctant about who I recommend to people because there's so many angry people out there that are so caught up with getting the message out there that it can sometimes ruffle people the wrong way. But I found the people that express the most amount of compassion and passion, like a few names that come to mind. One, and the biggest influences for me would probably be Timothy Sheath. He's an amazing athlete. He was the 2009 free running champion, and he has a way of expressing himself with tremendous love. Like, regardless of whether or not you agree with what he's saying as such, he resonates just a tremendous amount of love and compassion in everything that he says. And I think he really demonstrates what I would call ahimsa, which is what this whole thing is about. Basically, the whole idea of veganism is from the Jain tradition of ahimsa, which basically means non-violence. It's the whole approach of taking it as far as you can to not harm anyone. And I'd say Timothy Sheath expresses that to an absolutely beautiful level and has a lot of great information to share with people. And I think he's a great role model in the vegan community. I'd also recommend Infinite Waters. He has a very similar attitude.
Yeah, I watch videos.
Yeah, he doesn't focus on any of the negative stuff, and sometimes you're like, oh, come on, man, the sadist is real. But he has a beautiful way of inspiring people, and one of the things I love about him is he is massively knowledgeable about so many different things going on in the world. And one of the biggest factors for me changing my attitude towards a lot of the things was just learning. And I think someone like that, that goes into so many of the sciences pertaining to towards becoming a better person, and it's all interconnected. Like, when you learn about health, you learn about animal rights, vegetarianism, veganism. When you learn about psychology, you learn about how certain things that you do, they impact your state of mind, and how you basically want to go about perpetuating the most amount of love, not violence, because that comes back at you. That also ties towards, living a compassionate lifestyle. But I think the more you learn about these different sciences, you learn about all this stuff through people like Infinite Waters, it definitely helps you. So I'd recommend those two. And as far as the book that I would say was the biggest influence for me would be a book called The World Peace Diet. I think it's by a guy called William Turtle. I forget his name a little. I may butcher his name. I'll drop a link on this video. But it would be the most extraordinary book that covers this particular topic, because it looks at the historical aspect towards this whole diet, this diet and it gives you an understanding of this on so many levels. I mean, for me, one of the biggest things was understanding how you have a look at ancient civilizations. For instance, ancient Egypt. I'm hugely into the works of ancient Egypt. It's called the Comedical Sciences, and you understand how the people of ancient Egypt, they actually adopted a plant-based diet, a vegan diet within what they were doing. And I mean, you find that there's a lot of evidence for this. Huffington Post released an article some time ago where they'd studied the mummifications of some Egyptian mummies, and they found that their diet actually consisted of a vegetarian diet. And of course, this had pretty much been, we thought that they pretty much had at least a pescatarian diet. I think a lot of people thought they would consume fish because they lived around the Nile River, but it turns out that they actually had a plant-based diet. But you learn about the diet of these ancient civilizations. You learn about how so many of these wisdom traditions, for instance, I'm hugely into different spiritual traditions, and you find out how they adopted this diet for various reasons. They're all tied towards spirituality, and it gives you a much broader understanding of this whole lifestyle. And this is all covered within the World Peace Diet. So that, and obviously the health aspects of it, the ethical aspects of it, it weaves a story so brilliantly that I'd have to recommend that book over everything else I could recommend. But you know, I'm curious about you, because like usually whenever I do a podcast, it's because I tend to talk a lot. You probably notice I could waffle on for until Christmas time. You know, like I need to have someone interjecting me. Like I want to have a conversation with you about, I guess, your experience. I mean, obviously this has influenced you in a big way. So you've been interviewing a lot of people and trying to promote this thing. I'm curious, like what was the biggest, most influential thing for you in adopting this kind of lifestyle?
Oh, this is interesting. I'm getting asked questions. The biggest thing, well, for me, I was vegetarian I think I turned vegetarian about 4 or 5 years ago now. Okay. When I was, so 5 years ago now, and it was because of my parents. I was always very open to new things and change. And when my dad read the China study, and told us about it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And we started cutting out meat and dairy as well, and I started drinking soy milk. But I never really had a reason why. I just didn't really know. And then a couple of years later, I discovered veganism actually through social media, which is amazing because I think a lot of people come to veganism through social media. And then I discovered about, probably first of all, about the animals. And I watched a couple of videos. I watched 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. I watched Earthlings. I actually never got through the whole of Earthlings, which is...
well, mad props for getting through half of it. I know people that took 3-4 years. My closest friend, it took 3 years to get through that whole thing. And mad props to it. Yeah. So mad props to you.
Yeah, I'm going to finish watching it someday, definitely.
You don't need to finish it. You don't need to finish it. Yeah.
But yeah, I obviously know what's going on. I've watched a lot of other videos as well, and that just touched me in a big way. I've always loved animals, and then the health, of course, came as well. But that wasn't the biggest thing for me, probably. It was more, and then environmental. Yeah, then I watched Cowspiracy, and that just opened my eyes to another dimension of veganism, and then
sorry to cut you up, but I've always been really fascinated about the whole environmental movement, because I'd always think, just from my own kind of sense of values, that people care about the environment, or would it really impact them that much? But one thing I've been noticing, particularly as of late over the last, because I've been watching this whole thing, like I've noticed the changes that have been taking place since the 2009 to 2016, and you see the consciousness shift. And I found that one of the biggest influences in people adopting this whole vegan movement is this environmental factor. And whereas I would think it wouldn't be the strong point, but I think because people are so ecologically conscious like that, and because of documentaries like Cowspiracy, it's proving to be one of the biggest influences for people. Like, I know so many people that have just gone vegan because they care about the environment, whereas personally I'm like, Whereas I care about it, that has never been like a big thing to me. I've been like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah, all right. But
Yeah,
I found that
agree.
interesting. So with you, would you say that was the biggest, or?
No, probably not. I think it was ethical was the biggest, and
Yeah.
then health, and then environmental came a little bit later. But it just it just made it more clear. I was like, okay, veganism, that I have to stick to it, and I can make an impact. But yeah, I noticed that as well because I talked to a couple of friends, and one friend she said, oh, I would go vegan. She's vegetarian, and I don't know, maybe she'll go vegan someday. But
Yeah.
she said, oh, I would go vegan because of the environmental.
Yeah.
Because for environmental reasons, and that surprised me because a lot of people go vegan for ethical reasons, and
Yeah, that's true.
but there's so many more people now who are doing it for the environmental reasons. So
Absolutely. In fact, I just had a thought. I would actually say that the environmental reason, from a social perspective, it's probably the most positive positive reason, like as far as influencing people to go vegan, because I think whereas with the animal rights perspective, I think that's the most important. A lot of people get a little kind of offended. They feel a little judged when you kind of take on that route. And I think with the environmental perspective, a lot of people can appreciate the fact that you're trying to make the world a better place. No one's going to take offense to that. People look at people that are trying to heal the world, and I know very few people that are like, what, you're trying to heal the world? Well, you think we should make the world a better place? You're crazy. No one takes on that route. With the health thing, people are like, oh, you're just narcissistic. You just want to make yourself healthy.
Yeah.
You know, but with what I'm trying to say, I'm not sure if I butchered this, but with the environmental angle, I think it's very easy from a social perspective for people to look at this and say, wow, these guys are trying to make the world a better place. Whereas I think there are some people that can look at the animal rights perspective and say, these animals, they humanely slaughtered. Who cares about animals anyway? And even though they know what they're saying is kind of wrong, they kind of feel a little confronted, and they can't really appreciate it on the same level that they'd appreciate someone that is trying to make the world a better place. So from a social perspective, I think one of the most powerful things about the vegan movement, I think, is the fact that this is purely in terms of how the world perceives the veganism. And this is just me extemporaneously kind of just expressing this idea. I think the environmental perspective, it kind of opens people up to looking at vegans in a new light, in not so much a confrontational, annoying kind of light, or I guess to some extent, some people may consider them a little kind of, oh, you're only concerned about your health kind of thing. But from a very kind of like, we're all about trying to, we're trying to be the white blood cells of the planet and make this world a better place, heal it. And I think that makes it a really attractive movement. Whereas it's something that I've never really appreciated as much. I've always been like, yeah, okay, the environment, that's cool. I think from a social perspective, I think that's powerful.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. I actually never thought about that, but it's so true because, I think the environment, it affects us all. So I think that's why people are like, oh, okay. But some people, they don't really, with animals, they don't really,
Absolutely
they don't care. I mean, it's sad, but they don't care. And, oh, whatever. Yeah. But the environment, it affects us. If we damage our environment, if we destroy our planet, then we're not there. We don't exist anymore. So
exactly.
Definitely. I totally agree. Exactly. And it's a very mild way to go about explaining veganism, I think. More, definitely more, because like ethical, that's very, very controversial.
Or you're calling me a bad person just because I like to eat animals?
Yeah. And then health, are you calling me a fat and unhealthy person just because I eat, I eat dairy and
absolutely.
And bacon? Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely. And I think even though this is very altruistic, the environmental thing, it can also be selfish in a good way, because I think a lot of mothers, fathers, whereas they may not care about their own health, which is kind of crazy if you ask me, I care a lot about it. That's why it's so easy for me to stick to this. And obviously I love animals, but they care about their children. And whereas they may not care about themselves living in a beautiful environment, they think about the future for their children, and they don't want to ruin the future for their children. They think it's a form of selfishness if they're bringing children into this world that is completely stuffed up, that is on the verge of having its sixth mass extinction. I think I've read somewhere, because they're not being conscientious about what's going on. And I think from that perspective, a lot of people, like I've heard people talk about how they feel compelled towards making the environment better for their children, not for them. Because a lot of times people don't want to do things for themselves, but when it comes to the maternal instincts that parents have towards their young, it's unbelievable. It's so powerful. And one of the things I try to understand is, whereas I can't understand how people would want to harm animals, or even if it's indirectly through proxy, like paying supporting organizations to do something horrible like that. I can understand that. I try to open myself up to the idea that whereas people can't resonate with the compassion that I have towards animals, they have a tremendous sense of compassion towards their children or their health. And once again, you just have to find the angle that works for them.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point as well. Finding the angle that works for them. I've talked about that with another person I interviewed, and I can't remember who it was, but yes, finding what speaks to them. You know, if they love animals, then talk about that. If they have kids and they want to have healthy kids, talk about that and how it relates to veganism. So
Absolutely.
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so I think it's been a long interview.
Chat.
Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom, and I love how you you think about things from a little bit of a different perspective, and that's been so interesting. So
thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And one last thing, where can people find you or connect with you if they want to, learn more about you and listen to your music, of course?
Yeah. That's always a funny thing, because I find I kind of have these two lives online where I'm talking about a lot of activism, truth movement stuff related towards social justice, and there's this side of me, I guess on a different public level, where I'm obviously gigging around. I perform, been on The Voice, that kind of stuff, and I would, if people are interested in the activism thing, they're just interested in me as a person, I guess I'd refer them to the Crucial Journey, which is a podcast I've had probably since 2012, and that's when I got really immersed in, I guess, a lot of these social justice things, and I speak about a lot of this kind of stuff. Basically, I try to give people different perspectives on what's going on in the world, and I have a podcast. I also have a YouTube channel, but if you go to the Crucial Journey podcast, you can find that on Facebook. I'll send you a link to that. You can find out all my videos, all my non-conversations with people, non-versations as I call them. You notice I probably tend to talk a lot, have a big mouth, don't let people talk, which is terrible. One of the habits I'm trying to overcome. But as far as my music goes, you can check out Crucial. That's my fan page. I'm releasing a single in the next few months. I also DJ, gig around Melbourne, and I'm trying to get into some TV work as well, do some acting, but that's the whole entertainment side of things. And I think it's so important to have a passion and also to have a mission. Like, one of the words that has become my favorite lately is a Japanese word called ikigai, where it basically talks about how it's important. It talks about the balance between your passion and your vocation, or your like just the balance between finding something that you love doing and finding something that you need to do. And I think life is about finding a balance between those mediums, and it's perfect when people find something that can intertwine those things into one, where they have a passion that is also their mission. That's essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to find a way of making my love, which is performing, an art form, also a social justice thing as well, where I can somehow indirectly influence people towards my own values without doing that directly. Because I think it's so important to be what I love to call a Jupiterian hero, which is the whole idea of not only doing something for yourself, trying to make yourself a better person, trying to be a hero from the most obvious definition, but also be the kind of hero where you're uplifting the state of the world. You're bringing about an elevation in the consciousness of the masses without trying to sound all kind of like hippie and egocentric, but you're trying to make an impact on the world, and not only develop your consciousness, not only growing in your understanding of what's going on, elevating your material well, but elevating, trying to uplift, trying to make a change for the better in society. And when people do that, like in ancient Greece, they used to refer to this as the Jupiterian hero, someone that had not only achieved great victories for themselves, but had made a huge impact in the society. And that's the most admirable thing that anyone can do. Whereas I obviously love being the center of attention, all that kind of stuff, the people that most impress me throughout society are always people like Martin Luther King, that sacrificed themselves. They knew what they were getting themselves into. People like Gandhi, people like Rosa Parks, and the list goes on. People that try to make a change in the world, even though it was the cost of their own satisfaction. And when you can find a balance between enjoying yourself and also uplifting the world, that's something really profound. There's me waffling on again.
I love it. No, a really good point though, and I think a lot of people need to hear that. So, yeah, love it.
All right. Well, it's Katharina, right? I'm not sure if I was pronouncing your name properly. Was it Katharina?
Katharina. Yeah, so you don't say the H.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's it.
Well, yeah. I look forward to. I take you're coming to World Vegan Day coming up next month. Fantastic. Look forward to meeting in the flesh. Thanks for interviewing me. Really enjoyed hearing. I know I didn't really get an opportunity to delve much into your kind of experience, but perhaps I can interview you at some point. We'll see.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was really good to talk to you. Definitely. Sorry, I just clicked stop there. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to bring this to an end. Well, thanks again. And do you have some kind of social media that I can get, that I guess my viewers can get in touch with if they want to learn more about your activism and
cool sure. So actually, I have a personal, because I actually run my own business as well. So that's how I started coming up with all this summit thing, because I have a lot of resources and entrepreneurial ideas and
that's awesome.
All of that, and so I help people with digital marketing. So I help small business owners and help them, especially with Facebook ads and all of that. So
we need to talk, because that's something that I really need to get myself into. And any tips you can throw my way? That you're a digital marketer, because
so I've learned a lot about that over the years. I've done that for a couple of years now, and it's very interesting, and I love helping people with that. I actually noticed your website, I think, is expired. Are you
Oh I probably got to take care of that. I did. I've kind of just been using social media since I have you at my disposal right now. I thought I might as well ask you, what are your thoughts on having a website? Because I kind of feel there's so much social media these days, and they pretty much do the job, and it's hard updating so many things. Do you think it's still necessary to have a website as a first contact? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it just depends what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to, a website is good to collect leads. I guess that's what's really important for a lot of people, to collect email addresses, so you can email people and send them updates and sell them your stuff and all of that kind of stuff. So I think it is important, but then a lot of people say you don't need it. A lot of people have their business without a website, but I think it's good to just have something up to showcase who you are, what you do, how you help people, how people can get in touch with you. I think that's probably, I think I probably would have a website.
Because I feel like Facebook already does that, the fan page. I mean, I guess you don't have as much leeway in what you can do, but I'm pretty much.
I guess it's my first priority. I mean, it depends what you want to do, but I think social media is already a big thing. So if you just use that for now, and then if you do find that you might want to have a website and publish some posts or your music or a place, it's a website is just something that's all in one. So people can contact you, people can learn about you, people can find your social media, people can subscribe to your email list if you want to do that.
Absolutely.
People can book you to speak somewhere or perform somewhere. So
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely take that on board, and I look forward to meting you at the World Vegan Day. Perhaps you can give me some more digital marketing tips. You can tell me more about your business, all this. I think you mentioned the word holistic there, all that kind of holistic health, which I'm guessing you're very much into, because I'm a big fan of that as well. So much to talk about, and it's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you. Hope I haven't ranted on too much. I tend to go off and rant.
Thank you. It was good. It was I loved all your ideas, and it was, as I said, it was from a different angle, which I loved, and from a more spiritual, compassionate, and I think we didn't have a lot of speakers coming from that angle, and that's just
well, that's what I'm all about. I'm all about the spiritual, metaphysical, lyrical content. I'm a huge hippie. I tend to be reluctant to share that kind of stuff because I know a lot of the atheistic minded people tend to smirk at me, but that's very much what I talk about on the Crystal Journey, all that weird science and freaking magic, as I like to call it.
I'll check out your podcast for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And are you speaking at World Vegan Day, or are you just visiting?
No, this year I just wanted to kind of just cruise around and kind of enjoy the foods and kind of just irritate all my favorite speakers and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I performed last year. This year I kind of just want to enjoy myself and just experience the whole thing. So yeah.
Apparently it's going to be the biggest World Vegan Day ever. So
it always is. It grows exponentially. That's one of the things about society. I mean, people, the way in which people change is happening at an exponential rate, just like technology. We see people shifting in consciousness like twofold
through
every
social
year.
media.
So, absolutely. So that's one of the beautiful things about World Vegan Day. It started off about 10 years ago. I spoke to Mark Donahue, one of the creators of it. Maybe over 10 years ago, they only had like a small group of people, like just a small handful of people, and since then, I think last year we got to 14,000 plus. So it is growing and growing, and that's the beautiful thing. People are becoming more and more aware about what goes on in the world and opening up their hearts.
Definitely, yeah. It's so exciting. It's so exciting. I can't wait to see what happens in 5 years. Maybe a third or half of Melbourne will be vegan. Who knows?
We'll definitely see.
Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time as well. And I can't wait to meet you.
Likewise.
At World Vegan Day.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Let's stay in touch.
Yep, stay in touch.
All right. Take care then.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That was my interview with Katharina Alf. And I really enjoyed that. She is a very soulful, compassionate gal. And look forward to meeting her at World Vegan Day. I'm going to put some links down below to allow you to check out some of her stuff. And I'm sure she'll do the same with my stuff. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, freaks and geeks, brothers and sisters around the world, this is the Christian Journey podcast, where I disseminate spiritual, lyrical content, talk about social justice issues, and whatever else I deem is appropriate to discuss. Let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video, thumbs down if you hate it, and keep smiling. Keep being the change that which you want to see in the world. Until next time.
Ow! Yes, This song is called Be the Change, inspired by the words of Mahatma Gandhi, who lived for peace and not violence, and told us to be the change we wish to see in the world.